proclaim that we're going to have a democratic revolution. And I would use many words to describe the Taoiseach, but he certainly isn't leader of a democratic revolution. Over the past 20 months, what we have seen is not a democratic revolution, but a seamless transition of power from Fianna Fáil to Fine Gael and Labour. The National Recovery Plan 2011-2014, produced by Fianna Fáil in the dying days of the last government, I can honestly say there's very little difference between that and the programme being rolled out by the two parties in government at the moment. And I checked the Fianna Fáil programme in recent days, and it's amazing the similarities that are there. Fine Gael and Labour are happily implementing the policies contained in that programme. Water meters, water charges, household charge of €100 per annum, set to bring in next year then to increase in 2014 to bring in 500 million per annum. All invented by Fianna Fáil and implemented by this government. Fianna Fáil committed to cutting staffing levels in the public services. Fine Gael and Labour went further. Labour have turned out to be a failure for those who voted for them, a failure to bring in the transformative change that the Taoiseach promised before they came into power. One particular issue that has been met with fierce resistance is the proposed water charges and home tax. But in case I have forgotten what you said in your manifesto last year, Labour said that it does not favour water charges which do not address the immediate needs of those who currently receive intermittent or poor water supplies, unquote. But now in government, of course, it's different. You're proposing to use the National Pension Reserve Fund to install water meters on households so that you can charge households for it. The reality is that the Labour Party has been willing to support two budgets that have been regressive, divisive and unjust. According to the RSI, they commented on last year's budget that a combination of taxes and welfare changes imposed a greater loss to those on lower incomes. And according to groups this year, the same is due to happen again. Promises not to cut child benefit were trampled on in the rush to get around the cabinet table. But meanwhile, this year's budget brought even further cuts and payments to low and middle income households. To quote one of your own members addressing a Labour Party meeting in Liberty Hall last Saturday, former Councillor Brown and Maher, she said, quote, that the budget was not fair or equal and has disproportionately affected the lower income and the low paid, unquote. So I don't have to say it, I couldn't put any better myself. But in a desperate attempt to reclaim some dignity, some Labour TDs are writing out to constituents and saying that it is a priority to ensure that the budget is fair as possible under the economic circumstances and that those who have the most will pay the most. But that's not how it has turned out. It has turned out the opposite of that. In all seriousness, you couldn't even keep a straight face while saying that. It's a desperate attempt by a desperate government to try and spin their way out of trouble. The uncomfortable truth is, for those in government, on the government benches and that have to own up to, is that the cuts in budget 2013 are there for all to see. Job seekers cut to 9 months, respite, child benefit, back to school clothing allowance, farm assist payments for the lowest income farmers cut, and of course the educational allowances for those going back to education, they're cut, exceptional needs payments, the telephone and gas allowances for pensioners cut, third level education increased, and a cut in funding to VECs. The VECs are hanging on a shoestring at the moment. We have the increased PRSI for the low paid, college fees, motor tax, VRT, all punishing the low and middle income groups. So under Labour and under Fine Gael, no one earning less than 100,000 was supposed to pay more income tax. That's what the Labour Party told us. But this election promise by Labour has been shredded. Next year, those earning the least will have to pay more out of their income because of the increased PRSI. And this is going to put a huge burden on low-income households. The combination, and this is the point, the combination of cuts and increased taxes are going to put a huge burden when you put them all together, particularly on people in rural areas. People in urban areas are going to feel the pinch because they have already been hit with increased transport costs. So what I'm asking here is for the government, to sit up and take note of what they're doing. It's very, very hard for us to have confidence when we see this happening. And if we just highlight one issue that's under a Labour Party minister, the SUSI, the allocation of third-level grants and the administration of those. We've been trying to phone the Oireachtas helpline, and this is not the one the general public use. It must be worse for them. We've been trying to ring that for the last 3 to 4 days, and we can't get an answer on the phone. And the mailbox is full. We can't get an answer. You know, something as basic as that, something that was being administered by county councils and VECs, wasn't perfect and did need improvement. You know, but now it completely fails. You can't get an answer, and the mailbox is full. And here we are, nearly on top of Christmas. So just to conclude, you know, we can't have confidence when you have failed to deal with the bank debt, the mortgage crisis, and a strategy for jobs and sustainable growth. And this government has passed the sell-by date.